It is a major victory of people's power in Iran. After months of relentless protests by Iranians, the country's morality police has been disbanded. The announcement is a big breakthrough for protesters who have been out on the streets demonstrating and raising slogans relentlessly against the Iranian regime. From universities to ports to oil refineries, despite the severe crackdown, the protests failed to die down. Visuals from Iran of women chopping off their hair and burning their hijabs have shaken the world, giving rise as a major people's uprising. Over 200 people, including government officials, have lost their lives so far. The anti-hijab protests began after 22-year-old Mahsa Amini's arrest and death in the moral police custody in September of this year for allegedly violating the strict female dress code. The protests were not just limited to Iranian cities and spread globally, with more and more people backing the protesters. Widespread global protests also put further pressure on the Iranian regime. Iranian Attorney General Mohammad Jafar Montazeri told local news agencies the morality police have nothing to do with the judiciary and have been abolished. Reports say his comments came at a religious conference where he responded to a participant who asked why the morality police were being shut down. The announcement of their abolition comes a day after Montazeri said that both Parliament and the judiciary are working on the matter of whether the law requiring women to cover their heads needs to be changed. The hijab law was brought into effect in Iran 4 years after the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The morality police, known formally as the Gasht-ish-Irshad or the Guidance Patrol, were established under hardline President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Now, their motto was to spread the culture of modesty and hijab. The units began patrols in 2006. On Saturday, President Ebrahim Raisi said in televised comments that Iran's Republican and Islamic foundations were constitutionally entrenched, but there are methods of implementing the constitution that can be flexible. Now, we are being joined by Iranian analyst David Patrick Karakos from London. Apologies for the pronunciation. Now, this is, of course, a big win for the protesters in Iran. Take us through the latest move by the Iranian regime.
Sure. I'm not Iranian, by the way. I'm half Iranian, but British. Okay, as you say, this is this is, as it seems to be a very big victory. Let's see, there's slight confusion. Some say it's been suspended, some say it's been abolished. But make no mistake, this is a major climb down by the regime. Let's understand, and let your viewers please understand, that this, when we talk about the hijab, when we talk about the morality police, in of itself, it's not about that. They are symptoms of the Islamic Republic regime itself. By backing down on this, they are backing down on a fundamental ideological tenet of their own regime. So this is a very, very big win and a very, very serious blow to their authority.
And what does this mean now for the regime and the constitution of Iran? When asked why the morality police were being shut down, what is the reply?
Well, the reply is that, that they have nothing. They've done this sort of weasel word. They have nothing to do with the judiciary. I mean, to understand the Islamic Republic, you have to understand its constitution, which you rightly mentioned, which is this hybrid mixture of sort of the velayat al-faqih, the rule of the jurists, Islamic, sort of theology, and this sort of quasi-democratic bit they have in it as well with those elections, for president and so on, and sort of certain elements of the majlis. So they've essentially sort of retreated by a kind of mealy-mouthed formulation that actually it's not really necessary, but it doesn't really matter. The fact is, everybody knows that this is a huge climb down. Now, what I want to say is, there's a tendency to get carried away here. But when I talk about what this all means, what the hijab means, the hijab is almost like a cynic. It's almost a regime in microcosm. And I want everyone to understand, your viewers, what we're talking about here. In 2009, Iranians came onto the street to protest a fraudulent election result. They wore green because that was the color of Mir Hossein Mousavi, the candidate that lost due to election rigging. That was about election rigging. This is about the very nature of the regime itself. This is why, in the end, it's more or less lost all its legitimacy, and it's the beginning of the end for the regime. Now, the end may not come in 1 month, in 6 months, in 1 year, in 2 years, but this is the beginning of the end now. The people are not talking about electioneering. They're not talking about corruption. They're not talking about all the other individual issues that bothers them. This is about the regime itself, and they don't want it anymore, and they've had enough.
Right, and at the moment, David, what does it mean for the people of Iran, especially the women, in their day-to-day lives?
Well, we hope that it will mean that they're slightly easier, because there won't be a bunch of men, and it generally is men, driving around inspecting their hairline to see if their hijab is suitably, quote unquote, modest. And perhaps, we won't have the tragedy of Massa, who was beaten to death for essentially no reason. So let's see. But look, the regime is still the regime. So I'm sure, the oppression will continue. Hopefully this might alleviate some of it, but let's see.
Right. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for being with us on this broadcast and that analysis there.
Thank you.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.